we would like to start by putting the product development journey in perspective, in context. So from the first idea to mass production, how to show our STAR Accelerator electronics expert who has 30 years and plus more of experience in a wide range of industry, he will be sharing how effective planning and execution with structured approach can lead to a successful development of innovative products. So during the talks, if you have any questions, as I mentioned, please feel free to put them in the chat box, and we will be opening up to the question and answers after the talk. So without further ado, I would like to hand the virtual microphone to Howard now.
So hello, welcome to everybody. I'm Howard Shaw. I started many years ago as a mathematician, but I moved into practical engineering while I was at Kent University, and I graduated in 1983. Working in university research, first in nuclear magnetic resonance. We developed an MRI microscope, and then in space sciences, developing electronics for ground-based facilities and a couple of Mars missions. And I moved out into industry in 1996. Since then, I've been involved with electronics product design in the arcade industry, currency handling, automotive, more recently in the fire and security industries, before I joined STAR Accelerator as the electronics design engineer this January. I've spent most of my time designing life-critical battery-operated radio link devices for fire alarms. So over the next 15 minutes or so, I'd like to introduce an approach to the product design process that can be appropriate, efficient and achievable for the development of new products and services, and is applicable to businesses more or less of any size. A rigid formal process is not really appropriate to every case and business, but basic commonalities exist between all projects. I'm not going to deal with the actual product design process in detail. This session is only a few minutes. So I want to plot out the path and indicate how and where the LIH and the STAR Accelerator can help. So I've got nearly 40 years of experience of research in teams and companies with between 5 and 150 employees, let's say, and projects from maybe around £10,000 to £2.5 million, timescales from a few months to 3 years. So that's a very wide variety, and I've seen projects succeed and fail for a variety of reasons, but there are some themes that I've seen on many occasions, and there's similarities. So the product design is a process. It's a series of steps that gets us from an idea to a real physical product. And the cartoon shows what can happen if some of these basic rules aren't followed, and how different people envisage the way that a product should be. But in basic terms, what the customer needs is turned into what the customer wants in an ideal world, and what the supplier wants to make, whatever that might be, can be turned into what the supplier knows how to make. And that is the process. And LIH and STAR can help across a wide range of those things. So there's a series of challenges. These are really just basic ideas, basic concepts and things that you need to keep in your mind as you're thinking about the way that a product is going to be designed. Challenges to companies of all different sizes, and I've seen these things happen over my experience. Over planning kills the flexibility and causes unnecessary delays. Planning is vital, but you've got to understand that if everything is planned, if there are no unknowns, then you're not innovating. You've got to be developing things, and you've got to be unsure about the way that certain things are going to go. That's the way progress is made. So you plan for having to replan. You're having reviews and progress gates, and that keeps the team doing the work focused. But you have to remember, of course, not to micromanage, to give people the head for new ideas to come in. Scope, mission creep, I've seen again several times where mission creep, where people, as the project is developing, somebody will come up to the designer at a desk and say, wouldn't it be nice if? And those are words that designers dread. So mission creep, it kills your budget and it kills your time scale. You've got to keep the scope focused. The planning allows you to do that with reviews at regular intervals. And it's interesting, seemingly innocuous changes can have consequences. I'll give one quick example from a colleague's experience. Tumble dryers, many years ago, well, they still do, but many years ago, tumble dryers had a cool down period. At the end of running a tumble dryer, it runs for 10 or 15 minutes. After products have been developed by a particular company and were in the market, people said, somebody came to the designers and said, well, why don't we remove that cool down period? We can save electricity, we can be more eco-friendly, we can speed up the process. They went through the testing, they went through the development, and they released products that didn't have a cool down period. And they got a lot of fires. And suddenly tumble dryers were being recalled because they were catching fire. And there were failures in the design process that allowed that to happen. The original design decisions, when people sat down and worked out how long that cool down period could be, those decisions had been made, they'd been recorded, but there was no system for recovering that information years down the line. And you must always remember that a business keeps a database of its experiences. And as time goes on, those experiences build up. The problem is that a lot of that database is kept in the people's heads. So a process, part of the design process, is keeping that information relevant and testing at every stage so that you can see where problems are going to arise. Now, that's just one example of where moving the project scope led to disaster. Costs and resources are vital to the way that projects develop. Underspending will cost more in the long term, so resourcing appropriately and in good time is important. You've got to be realistic about the equipment that you need, the manning levels and timescales. You don't skip testing, you don't skip documentation. Documentation seems an expensive waste, but it is important. And you don't skip reviews and the supporting of staff, the additional people. Fail fast to recover fast. Redesign can succeed over modification. There are points where you're developing a product and moving forward, and little issues will arise, and you fiddle and you make this bit work and you make that bit work and you're moving forward. But there will come a stage at which you say, look, this is becoming a camel, a horse designed by a committee. Stop, work backwards, start again and go in a new direction. Failing, a failed design can be quicker in the long run, and a fresh insight can revitalize stagnant projects, and we can help on that. New sets of eyes coming into the design process are useful. And making it work once is not the end. And I've seen many people who little inventors sitting in sheds, have an idea, work in the evenings and weekends, come up with a working product, come into a design house and say, I've got this working product now, can you just make me 10,000 of them? And that's not the end. Making it work once is a big step forward, but it's not the end of the process. So you've got to design with manufacturer in mind. And one thing that I've found, especially the smaller businesses tend to leave till the very end, is approval regimes. Brexit has really brought this to a head, with the changes and the uncertainty within the UK market with regard to the removal of CE marking and the changes to the UK CA system, which has now come in. And at the moment, CE marking and the UK are running in parallel. They will diverge slowly over time, but pre-compliance, testing your products before they go into your formal approval process is important, and that's something that we are concentrating on. So early liaison with the approvals authorities. Don't be frightened of these organisations, these bodies, people like, as was Department of Trade and Industry and the approvals houses and the CE marking authority as it was. Those nominated bodies and approved bodies, they are here to help. It can be daunting, and again, we can provide relationships between. We have certainly personal relationships is the way to work with these things, so those we can help. And understanding the concept of risk. Risk is a technical term, and requirements-based standards are moved across over the last years to risk-based standards for compliance and for approvals within getting a real physical product into the market. So the process then becomes preparation, development and production. And I'm not really going to talk in detail about any of these at the moment, but there is a flow. There are gates at each stage at which you wish to move forward with checks and balances. And vital, I mentioned earlier, a lessons learned system, a lessons learned database. A new company startup, of course, has no lessons learned, but experience, talking to people such as ourselves with the years of experience, we can help get that lessons learned database and build that quickly. So quickly looking through things, the ideas and scope and the beginnings of a project. You have a concept, you perform market research, and that leads you to decisions on the territory that you're going to be selling your product into. And that leads to an approvals regime. So that's where UK CA marking in Europe, underwriters laboratories or FCC, Federal Commission in America, and all across the world. There are these approvals regimes, the Middle East, Australia, all places. And again, from market research, you get functionality. You decide, or you get a feeling for what the customers require, the functionality of your product, the lifetime, and from that you get a sustainability. Putting those back together again gives you a time scale and a budget, allocation of resources, and from that you can target a price point within the market. You feed that back into market research. And at the end of this process, you have documentation. And all of these processes will result in documentation. That documentation is part of your lessons learned. It's information to refer to in the future when you've forgotten why you made particular decisions. And it's also documentation that external bodies are going to require, the technical file for approvals. So you have a requirements capture, and there are many ways of doing requirements capture. I've experience of 3 or 4 different ways of doing it. They're all about equivalent. It depends upon the market and the customers you have as to how you organize requirements. You have a design description, which is where the actual product design starts from, a plan for how you're going to develop it, a plan for how you're going to get it into the market, an approval plan. And then you have your budget and your risks and your technical file. And then the actual exciting bit, the development and the design of the product, and right in the middle of it is the bit that nobody likes doing, documentation. I'm afraid software engineers are even worse than hardware engineers when it comes to documentation, but it is the center of what you do. The actual design here, that is a very small part of what you're going to be doing, but it's the part that is the most exciting. Verifying the model against requirements and reviewing what you do and having a change control process so that you feed back into the documentation and you feed back into the next generation of your development process. So you're going around this loop, and each time you go around the loop, the pre-production model, the prototype that you create, is closer to what you're going to manufacture at the final end. And then we move into production. And production engineering looks very similar to design. And basically you're taking the suppliers, you're taking the production and end-of-line test. And all of these processes are going forward. And you need a process to collect and analyze your customers, to feed back information from them, which is going to move forward in your future products. You need to identify any issues you have with the production and with the shortcomings to the product. So again, you have a loop around, and that's future product development. Making the product work, putting it on the market is not the end. So that's a very, very quick whiz through a production process. We, as I say, we can help with advice, we can help with aiming and targeting you and keeping scope and holding the product design process for you. As you'll see a lot today, here's the email address and the telephone number for Leicester Innovation Centre. We are always available. We've always got email and telephone contact. Contact us, talk to us with regard to funding. We can help with dealing with the project planning, applications, management of that funding. We act as a link between the university resources, the scientists, the meetings, the technology and the machines, and we can provide advice on all of that. So that's a very, very quick run through. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Howard, for this very insightful talk. So cautious of the time, I'll just ask whether we can leave the question and answer towards the end of the session. But if you have a burning type of question, please raise your hand and then we can just have it answered now. Okay, so
Andrew, are you raising your hand? You're on mute.
Yes, I am. Thank you very much, Omar and Mark. Looking forward to Howard. Looking forward to our conversation later. We are quite advanced in the early prototype stages with considerable support. What I'd like to know is if the process includes the medical file, which is required for medical compliance. And I think I raised the topic 138485, I think is the ISO reference. And always dyslexic, sorry guys. And also, do you work and support the holistic system, which is the software and potentially firmware that would go into the cloud to support an ecosystem?
The medical side is something that personally I've not worked on the medical side specifically, but we have people within LH who have, and I'm sure we can put you in contact with them, but certainly there's no problem with that. And the medical people have worked before.
It's not the people I'm after. It's because everything has to develop in a medical file and process. Either the university has that facility and facilitates that, or that we work in collaboration with another company, in our case it's EPAM, that will provide that whole underpinning documentation compliance process. I don't mind, it's not a problem one way or the other. I just wanted to know whether the resources at Leicester were compliant with developing a medical file, medical compliance.
Yeah, Michael, do you want to mention that, because you've got more experience than we have? I see you in the chat.
Yes, good morning, everybody. I'm just turning my camera on, so whether you see me anymore. Anyway, if you can't see me, hello. Yes, good morning, everyone. Yes, we're working quite widely with Leicester University and other teams, providing support in the 13485 medical device design area. So we're really keen to collaborate with teams, including those from the university, to deliver what you need. Andrew, we've met and discussed a little before, but not on this particular topic, I think. So happy to have a general meeting with you and whoever from Leicester, yes, after, as you like, and take this forward.
Yeah,
I'm steaming ahead, guys, and I just can't wait. And I've got a roadmap. I've got all the support from major leading companies. What I need to know is how to structure the relationship and the collaboration between the university, which I'm craving for, and that interaction with the hospital and the life sciences, which we're already engaged with, and my existing partnerships. So maybe we can have this offline. But
yes, so Andrew, I think we can definitely have this offline, and we can also invite our Leicester Life Sciences Accelerator program, who can provide further advice and further guidance on the particular steps for how we can enable you to access these capabilities as well. So if I may, if you can take this offline, that will be, I think, great, and we will have a networking session at the end where we can discuss this further.